So that was a nice meme made by William of Ockham. I think he made it that encapsulates how this weekend went for the people who were rooting for the impeachment. And as usual, I think that this is an event that shows people should not expect too much from a system that doesn't really serve any higher purpose, unfortunately. And I say this as someone who, I think you know that I did not support impeaching Donald Trump either the first or second time. But if you are a fan of, due process for all American citizens, you can't pick and choose which ones you think are deserving of such a right and which ones you think are not deserving of it. And I say this because on the other side of the coin, you still have people like the members of the Kinwa Society that keep saying, oh, we need military tribunals in order to deal with all of these Democrats who are betraying the country and all of that. Now, I get it that you're extremely frustrated and I'm extremely frustrated and the system seems to be cracking and falling apart. But the answer isn't military tribunals and it isn't impeachment after impeachment, and it's not, trying to make this into a country that is basically so bifurcated and partisan that you can't actually have any sort of unity on anything. The answer is to go back to having standards and to having the people who fail to reach those standards really feel the consequences of it. And I'm sorry to say, I think we're very far from that ever happening, because when we have, on the one hand, you have Democrats who they don't seem to believe in accountability for any of their own people until some sort of political goal has been reached, or you have people on the Republican side who seem to think that, oh, we need to literally just blindly trust in the power of some of these political figures. No, I don't think that we're anywhere close to having a consistent standard. And I think that as much as I am, clearly you can see the thumbnail, you can see the background, which is the same. The problem is that, yes, I am happy that Donald Trump is acquitted. I think that the first impeachment trial that he went through was a farce, right? And you might remember that the House indicted him after a long and very boring, impeachment process. I remember it very well, where they were bringing endless witnesses and trying to muck everything up and confuse people. And they thought a preponderance of verbiage, right? This big, like, diarrhea of words and witness testimony would make the impeachment fly, and it didn't, right? Because most people, when they would watch these impeachment hearings that were happening, when you would see people like Fiona Hill, or in some cases, there was what's the guy's name, Alex Vindman, I think his name was, the so-called main whistleblower. When you would see them testify, you would just see that the majority of it wasn't really based on any evidence. It was just partisan garbage that they were objecting to what the president did and what his opinions were and his vision of policy towards Ukraine. That was the first impeachment. The second impeachment, they went and overcompensated the other way. They didn't have any witness testimony. They didn't really go through, in the House, I'm saying. So they didn't have any witness testimony in the House. They didn't have any hearings in the House. They just had a vote. And then when they got to the Senate, they wanted to present it as if it was a real trial. Now, I want to show you this video. It is on Rumble. By the way, I want you to subscribe to me, whether it's on Rumble, whether it is on BitChute, which I think is the most viewed platform for my channel, at least. I want you to subscribe to me on Odyssey if you can, which is my favorite one to use, and help to break away from mainstream big tech. So anyway, this is Representative Madeleine Dean, who attempted to introduce new evidence at the closing argument. So one of the features I think that will be taken from this impeachment, which will go down in history as a forgettable and rather ridiculous exercise of naked political power that failed. I think one of the biggest takeaways is that no, the Democrats were not really playing as if they were looking at this as a true test of the power of the Democratic Party, because they sent to this impeachment hearing what you could consider maybe their B team, or if you want to be charitable, some of their younger or lesser known people like Madeleine Dean and like Joe Neguse, who is a congressman from Colorado, and Jamie Raskin from Maryland, and of course Eric Shartwell, the congressman from California, who's considered a joke. And clearly they were thinking, oh, we're going to have these people present it, and the media pressure is going to be enough to convict Donald Trump. But the truth is that they have treated the impeachment process and also now the trial of an impeachment defendant, which is what the Senate does. They've treated it as a completely political tool, right? It is a political process. You do have senators essentially acting as a jury for a political trial, not for a legal trial, right? So they've said, well, we're going to use this in order to accomplish political goals. And in this case, the goal would be to preclude former President Trump from running from office again. By the way, I don't know if he's really going to be able to do it, because, you know, he's not going to be in what is it going to be, 4 years? 3 years would be the next election season. He's going to be an old man. He's going to have a lot of issues in terms of, deciding whether we want the same person to be representing the party as before, right? For various reasons, right? I think he could certainly be, and this is something I think they were also trying to prevent. Donald Trump is going to definitely be a person who affects the future course of the Republican Party, because the opposition to Donald Trump has largely been, within the Republican Party, has largely been pathetic and made up of a lot of like really sore and irrelevant people, right? The truth is that I think the Republican Party, if it was a viable alternative, it would have many people who could be competitors of Donald Trump, right? I think we should always look for people who are truly better. But the truth is that he was better than all of them, better than the alternative Republican candidates, certainly in 2016 and in 2020, when there were a couple of never Trumpers. One of the reasons for that is because nobody really seems to have a vision besides him. He has a vision for better trade policies, harder immigration controls. He has a vision for more election integrity, right? And the truth is that people want more of the Donald Trump policies, whether or not you like Donald Trump the person. So that's just the reality. But here is, again, the video of Madeleine Dean basically bungling basic procedure in what should be a very simple trial.
What's more, the insurrectionists were not hiding. They believed they were following the orders from our commander-in-chief. They felt secure enough in the legitimacy of their actions to take selfies, to post photos and videos on social media. After the attack, rioter after rioter confirmed this too. Jenna Ryan, who was later accused for her role in the insurrection, said, quote, "I thought I was following my president. I thought we were following what we were called to do." And President Trump requested that we be in D.C. on the 6th. When it became clear that Donald Trump would not protect them, some of his supporters said they felt duped. They felt tricked. Listen to some of this evidence.
And even if they think for a second that they're going to get away with it today, they got another thing coming. Because today is just a day. And today is just the beginning. They haven't seen a resistance until they have seen a patriot fight for their country.
If you died today.
Parties will withhold.
This is crooked.
The parties will withhold.
It is in the record.
The evidentiary record is closed. Express 47 described the scope of those things admitted into evidence as those referenced in trial. New evidence is not permitted in closing argument. References to such new evidence will be stricken.
So this is, mind you, this is evidence that she tried to introduce as a Democratic congresswoman prosecuting a Republican president before a Democratic-controlled Senate with a Democratic senator presiding at trial, and she couldn't even, so she violated the rules even though the entire process is rigged in her favor. And that's why I think that if people actually examine how this went down, they will see that this was an amateur process. I think it didn't matter. Now, I heard that there were issues where the Trump lawyers were not really terribly effective, and they were also, in some cases, just very soft and whatever. It didn't matter, okay? People who were expecting the Trump side to put on this amazing show and talk about all of the fraud that happened or did not happen in the election or whatever, they don't understand what the main goal was here. All they had to do was prevent 67 senators from voting to convict Donald Trump, and they more than accomplished that. They in the end got it to be 57-43, and those 7 Republican senators that broke ranks and joined the Democrats, I think, are going to face certain consequences down the road, or at least most of them. The ones that are up for ballot soon, I think Lisa Murkowski. But the bottom line is that this was a huge waste of time. And the Democrats were using this in order to distract from the fact that they don't have a true agenda for the American people. Now, they have an agenda for muzzling criticism. They have an agenda for violating your Second Amendment rights. They have an agenda for expanding abortion access throughout the country. And by abortion access, I think that they also mean encouraging women to have abortions, even in cases where they probably shouldn't, right? So this is an issue where the Democrats are using this impeachment trial and the specter of Donald Trump in order to distract from the fact that no, they're not really they're not a party that presents a real vision of change to the people that they recruited to help win the election, right? So I'm talking about the Rainbow Coalition of women, minorities, the gay community in some cases, and immigrants, and and union members, right? So they've already pissed off a number of these different constituencies. One of the main examples I'd like to point out is their decision, which, by the way, if you're reading the newsletter, or if you're subscribed to the newsletter, which you can always subscribe to, by the way, we will be sending out an article tonight talking about talking about sports in a different way. But with regards to what's happening with, the Biden administration, they're trying to expand all of this access to women's sports for transsexual athletes, right? And this is something that I think most women and most younger women and girls, they would say, well, this is an imposition on something that we have a right to. We have a right to compete in our own sector of sports, just as men did for so many years. And yet the Democratic Party is imposing mandates through federal legislation and also through executive order, if necessary, in order to get it so that women don't have necessarily their own sector in sports. So here is the sign up, by the way. So just was trying to get that in there. I want you to subscribe to the newsletter, and you'll read a little bit more about that. But that's just one sector where the Biden administration has alienated people. They've also alienated union workers through the cancellation of the Keystone XL pipeline. They've alienated members of the Black community through a lot of their, I guess, ignoring of the actual Black Lives Matter movement since they came into office, right? So the Black Lives Matter movement was demanding meeting with the Biden administration. The Bidens apparently said, whatever, right? And by the way, so another sector that they've alienated is, they haven't alienated them totally, but they've certainly given them a little bit of a few ruffled feathers here. So the press, right? So the press is starting to realize that there isn't really a commitment to freedom of the press on the part of the Biden administration. Are they going to call for the impeachment of Joe Biden over his administration's, conflict with freedom of the press? No, nor do I think that you can really impeach him over that. I'm just being, rhetorical here. So, but in the Trump era, if something like this was to happen, where a press aide, a deputy press secretary, threatened to destroy a reporter as Biden's assistant, or I think it's deputy press secretary, TJ Ducklow, he did that in order to conceal a personal relationship with a reporter, right? So were that to happen under Donald Trump, they would be calling for that aide's head, and they would be saying, we need to impeach Donald Trump over this. So it says White House Deputy Press Secretary TJ Ducklow resigned on Saturday after a report emerged that he verbally threatened a reporter who was pursuing a story about his romantic relationship with another reporter. Ducklow, who had been serving a week-long suspension without pay for the incident, posted a statement on Twitter confirming his resignation. No words can express my regret, my embarrassment, and my disgust for my behavior. I use language that no woman should ever have to hear from anyone, especially in a situation where she was just trying to do her job. It was language that was abhorrent, disrespectful, and unacceptable. He said, I am devastated to have embarrassed and disappointed my White House colleagues and President Biden, who probably doesn't even know about this. And after discussion with White House communications leadership tonight, I resigned my position and will not be returning from administrative leave. So essentially, this is going to be a very funny situation. Now, is he going to be criminally charged? Because one of the implications of the whole impeachment against Donald Trump was that using language like fight or language like go to the Capitol or things like that constituted threats. Now, does it not constitute a threat to say to someone that you are going to destroy her, which is exactly what Ducklow did? Well, apparently not, because he hasn't been criminally charged, nor should he. But the idea is that you have different standards for different people. I think that he was removed simply because the media does not want to be made to look like they're just buttering up the Bidens endlessly. But the truth is, if the media actually believed in a free press and in the First Amendment and everything, they would be saying this is indicative of really what the Biden administration is about and what the Democratic Party has become about. We will choose what you will write about, and you're just going to have to beg for access and all of that. And I don't think really anything has changed with the resignation of Ducklow. I think maybe they made a little bit of a misstep and all of that. And to be clear, I think that the media is still on the same side as the Biden administration. It's just that they're an extension of it. So whether it was the reporter who would have to take it on the chin in order to not get pushed around by this press aide, or whether it was the press aide who would have to resign over this, they're both in the end on the same side. The media is on the side of the Biden administration. It's just that this incident itself had to be resolved, and that's the way it's going to be treated. So they don't go into any of the obvious, so even they said it here. Psaki subsequently suspended Ducklow for 1 week without pay. She later had to defend her decision after reporters asked whether her suspension of Ducklow fell short of President Biden's message to his political appointees on Inauguration Day. Biden told staffers that he would fire them on the spot if they treat another colleague with disrespect. Now, that wasn't on the spot. It took a little bit. Now, he didn't get fired. Also, he was forced to resign, and that is really, I think, the message that we have to take from this. So before I, go a little too far down that path, I want to steer us back to really the reason that I'm talking about this. So the impeachment hearings which did not happen. Which it's important to note. If you impeach someone, typically you have hearings before the impeachment in order to present the actual evidence. In this case, there was no evidence presented in the House. They simply went ahead with a vote. And therefore, they had a hasty case to make, and they had to present it to the Senate. And in many cases, the presentation was lacking, right? So even though the Trump legal team wasn't by all accounts very compelling, the prosecution, the Democrats also seem to be off of their best game, which is never that good anyway. And this is the interview that's been made viral since then with I think his name is Steve Vanderveen, one of the Trump attorneys, and it's with CBS News.
Joining me now is former President Trump's attorney, Michael Vanderveen. Thank you, sir, for joining us. Let's get right into those words.
I guess it's Michael Vanderveen, as she said.
That we heard from Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell. He ended the trial with his passionate speech about President Trump's involvement in the insurrection. During it, he said that the former president is still liable for everything he did during his period in office. Are you expecting to face more charges against Mr. Trump in the near future, and do you anticipate being part of that defense?
No, that's just political rhetoric, and I was hopeful that something would come out of this, that the political rhetoric would stop out of Washington, D.C., but I guess apparently it hasn't.
Were you, though, surprised to hear those words coming from the leader of the Republican Party in the Senate?
I'm not surprised to hear a politician say anything at all. No.
Well, throughout the trial, you denied that Mr. Trump had a role in inciting the January 6th insurrection at the Capitol. You argued, first of all, that there was no insurrection, but during your closing arguments, you seemingly admitted that there was, in fact, an insurrection, using that word, saying that was not up for debate. What role did the former president play?
You didn't understand the case. I used the word
I'll give you the opportunity to clarify, sir.
Sure. I used the word insurrection in my closing argument when quoting the charging documents. What happened at the Capitol on January 6th is absolutely horrific. But what happened at the Capitol during this trial was not too far away from that. The prosecutors in this case doctored evidence. They did not investigate this case, and when they had to come to the court of the Senate to put their case on, because they hadn't done any investigation, they doctored evidence. It was absolutely shocking. I think when we discovered it and we were able to expose it and put it out, I think it turned a lot of senators. The American people should not be putting up with this. They need to look at who these House managers were and look to see whether these are the folks they want representing them. It was shocking to me. Wouldn't have believed it.
So this is him putting forward a real problem with the procedure, which is that if you're presenting evidence, and when you present evidence in a legal setting, now I'm not an attorney, this guy is, I'm assuming that the reporter interviewing him is at least, briefed on some of the legal procedures that are in play with impeachment and the impeachment trial. When you present evidence that's falsified, it's by definition inadmissible, and it also is a huge problem for trial attorneys when they see it, and they therefore can actually move for a mistrial, because they will say that the prosecution is attempting to, first of all, railroad their client based on forged evidence and prejudice the jury, right? If I tell the jury lies about the defendant and spin tales about various things that they're doing that are not true, they can't unhear it, and that's a real obstacle that trial attorneys, they have to deal with. I've heard a number of attorneys deal with it, talk about how they have to ask for it to be stricken from the evidence. Sometimes it doesn't really help. So that's why often that'll lead to a mistrial. Watch how she responds.
Let's follow up with a point that you're making right now about the House managers, as you say, doctoring evidence, and the argument.
They didn't deny
for
it.
Our viewers,
they didn't deny it. I put it in front of them 3 times.
To be clear for our viewers, what you're talking about now is a check mark. That's a verification on Twitter that did not exist on that particular tweet. A 2020 that should have actually read 2021, and the selective editing, you say, of the tapes. Is that the doctored evidence of what you're speaking?
Wait, that's not enough for you? That's not enough for you?
No,
wait, no,
sir,
no.
I'm trying.
Listen,
I am not a juror in this trial. What I'm trying to be clear for our viewers is what you're referring to, because not everybody has been following.
It's not okay
not everybody,
to doctor
sir,
a little bit of evidence.
Respectfully. I have not said it is okay.
Ma'am, your question is
I want to be clear for our viewers.
Listen,
So listen to how this interview goes off the rails. And I guess if you're a person who believes in the media, you'll think that he's being hyperbolic. But think about it really and put your perspective on it. In order for the trial of Donald Trump to be fair, he cannot be convicted based on tampered or forged evidence or any sort of fabricated evidence, right? It has to be a fair trial. Otherwise, that conviction can be overturned and would be overturned in a court of law. Now, obviously, many of you might be skeptical. You might be saying, oh, who cares? The courts are all corrupt anyway now. But let's humor the world and say, this trial has to stand the test of actual review by, an independent judiciary, right? And by the way, I think there still are courts that would examine this trial and say, yeah, even if he was convicted, it would be complete bullshit. First of all, there was no grounds to even impeach him, impeaching, reading, indicting him, because what he did wasn't criminal, right? He expressed some words that some of the people didn't like, and then something bad happened that was not directly induced by the words that he said. So the whole notion that this trial was a good barometer for how to conduct, whether it's a political trial, whether it is a criminal trial, it just goes out the window, because once you start to introduce false evidence, the confidence in the process itself starts to break down. And this reporter is trying to diminish the gravity of that problem.
I want to be clear for our viewers about what exactly you're saying when you say doctored evidence.
The media has to start telling the right story in this country. The media is trying to divide this country. You are bloodthirsty for ratings, and as such, you're asking questions now that are already set up with a fact pattern. I can't believe you would ask me a question indicating that it's all right just to doctor a little bit of evidence. There's more stuff that we uncovered that they doctored, to be frank with you, and perhaps that will come out one day. But we won this case, and I'm not a sore loser, but what happened, or a sore winner, I should say, but what should happen is somebody should look at the conduct of these House managers. It's unconscionable, aside from all of the due process.
So one of the advantages I see in the way he's expressing himself, and this is only if you look at this with the eye of what he is and what he's talking about. This is a guy who is a trial attorney talking about real breaches of professional ethics within that craft. It's one of the reasons people don't want to be attorneys, right? Including, I would never want to do it. I think that there's too much dirty conduct within that profession. I think it's one of the reasons that there's such little confidence in the court system and within the prosecution. I think it's one of the reasons that whatever you think about Black Lives Matter, people do have a right to inquire whether there are many people who are innocent behind bars that are simply there because the system railroaded them, right? I'm not going to say everyone is, but there's definitely reason to question whether that's true. You see people like Kamala Harris becomes the vice president despite questions of her conduct as a prosecutor that were raised by other Democrats. That's one of the things that I think is an advantage of having someone like this pleading the case who is a professional attorney as opposed to a political person.
Violations that my client had. And the media should be looking at a square, straight way. A straight way. When I watch the news, I watch one station and it's raining. I watch another station at the same time and it's sunny. Your coverage is so slanted, it's got to stop. You guys have to stop and start reporting more like PBS does rather than a TV news show that doesn't have any journalistic integrity at all. What I'm telling you is that they doctored evidence. And I believe your question says, well, it's only a Twitter check and changing a year of a date here. They switched the date of a Twitter a year to try to connect it to this case. That's not a small thing, ma'am. The other thing they did is they put a check mark on something to make it look like it was a validated account when it wasn't. And when they were caught, they didn't say anything about it. They didn't even try to come up with an excuse about it. And that's not the way our prosecutors or our government officials should be conducting themselves. And the media shouldn't be letting them get away with it either. I'm tired of the biased media on both sides, left and right. What this country wants, what this country needs, is this country to come together, to take the left and the right and find a middle ground and start responsibly being our public officials, our elected officials. And one of the reasons why they do it is because of the media. Because the media wants to tell their narrative rather than just telling it like it is. And frankly, I'm tired of it. I'm not a media. I'm not in front of your cameras all the time. But what I've been subjected to this last week.
I understand, and I've given you the opportunity.
You don't want to hear the truth. Yeah. Okay.
Look at her expression. So she's trying to stay polite about it, and he's clearly not being, he's not being pretentious. He clearly is showing you this displeasure. You can see from his body language. I bet there's going to be a Bombards video about this, or even a Derek Van Shake video about it. If you follow either of those channels on YouTube, or I know Bombards is on Odyssey at least. He's crossing his arms. He has his eyebrows arched. His eyebrows are already a little bit quizzical. So, and she's just trying to, why can't you just play nice? Why can't you just be happy? No, this isn't about being happy about the impeachment. It's I think why this resonated so much among people who were observing what was going on is because Michael van der Veen is correctly pointing out that the process is tainted, the system is tainted, the people who are part of the process are tainted, and the media doesn't care.
I've given you the opportunity. I will remind you that what I said was that for our viewers who have not been following all of the hours of this trial, to be clear about what you are speaking about. And I understand
I'm speaking
that you
about
seem
the House
very
manager's
upset.
failure to prove their case. That's what I'm telling you. They weren't able to prove their case.
You have won the acquittal of your client.
Yeah.
You have won the acquittal. Why can't you just be happy? Why can't you just smile for the camera? That's what you want.
And if you'd like to continue to talk about this conversation, we can have that discussion.
I don't need to.
But for me to ask a question,
A slanted question that was set up to say it's okay for them to cheat. That was your question. Isn't it okay for them to cheat?
I didn't say that.
It's just a little bit. You said, to be fair, it was only a check on the Twitter. That's what you said. You got to live by your words. That's the problem. The media has to start living by the truth and not try to create a narrative.
Michael van der Veen.
Yep.
Thank you for joining us. I do appreciate.
Yep.
Okay. I see you taking off your microphone now. That was President Trump's defense attorney, Michael van der Veen.
So you had a literal mic drop at the end there. And I think that that's something that we want to see a little bit more as we go forward. Unfortunately, we don't have a transparent media. We don't have a transparent political system. And in some cases, you're going to have to see people basically breaking the rules of the media because they don't really care about delivering the truth. They don't care about reporting things as they are. They don't care about giving the viewer a right to make up their own mind. They are opinionated. They are driven by their own emotional goals, and in some cases, a lack of emotion. You can see there's a very, very plastic reaction to what's going on because obviously this is a news anchor. And when you're a news anchor and you appear to be less genuine than a lawyer, I think it shows how far media has fallen. So that's about it for today. I want you to find me, whether it is on Rumble, right? You can find me at Chef Leopard on Rumble, right? You can see right here. You can find me also on BitChute, right? That's also Chef Leopard. And you can find me on Odyssey, okay? You can find me there. 2 different channels. They're both at Bold Like a Leopard over here. And, of course, sign up for the newsletter. There is a newsletter coming out. It's 17 minutes after. It's coming out at 7, so it's coming out very shortly after I get off of here. So I'll talk to you later. Have a great night. And God bless.